In all the world, there is no desolation more complete than the polar night. It is a return to the Ice Age. No warmth, no life, no movement. Only those who have experienced can fully appreciate what it means to be without the sun day after day and week after week. Few men unaccustomed to it can fight off its effects altogether, and it has driven some men mad. In 1845, a journey commenced that would mirror previous quests that consumed some of Europe's most talented mariners for centuries. It was an obsession that splintered the European understanding of the North Americans' high latitudes with incredible cost to both vessels and men. Two massive British ships left harbor on a voyage to traverse the last unnavigated portions of the Northwest Passage, a sea route between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Arctic Ocean. These two ships, named the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror, were led by Sir John Franklin, a Royal Navy officer and Arctic explorer, alongside his second-in-command, Francis Crozier. Franklin had two previous expeditions to the Northwest Passage, and this was his final chance at traversing through it and claiming victory. This expedition was ordered to gather magnetic data in the Canadian Arctic as well as finished a crossing of the Northwest Passage, which had only partially been charted from both east and west but never fully navigated. Years earlier, during the Ross expedition in 1839 to 1843, both the Erebus and Terror explored the Arctic and made several zoology and botany discoveries along their journey while captained by James Clark Ross. Both of these massive vessels had been tried and tested during the years they spent in the cold, barren Arctic waters. The Erebus was a Hecla-class bomb vessel constructed by the Royal Navy in 1826. The Hecla-class ships were built in the early 19th century by the Royal Navy and designed for use as bomb vessels. Later, many of them were converted for use in exploration and survey ships because of how well built and tough they were. They were newly fitted with heating systems, reinforced hulls, and steam engines for when the winds failed them on the high seas. This allowed the vessels to easily break through the ice. Sir John Franklin was a loyal soldier and served in wars against Napoleonic France and the United States. He led two expeditions into the Canadian Arctic and through the islands of the Arctic archipelago in both 1819 and 1825. He seemed as the best fit to lead both the Erebus and Terror back into the Arctic for one final push through the Northwest Passage. Franklin's second-in-command, Francis Crozier, was an Irish Royal Navy officer and polar explorer who participated in over 6 expeditions to the Arctic and Antarctic. Crozier was appointed to the rank of commander in 1837 after several explorations and voyages across the world. 2 months after setting sail, both ships were witnessed in Baffin Bay. This was the last time either crew of the Erebus or Terror would ever be seen. Upon their treacherous attempt to hastily pass through the Northwest Passage into the Pacific Ocean, both ships became frozen in the ice. They themselves had become part of the shifting ice. Erebus and Terror were trapped in a remote and desolate area which the Inuit rarely visited, calling it Tununik, or the Back of Beyond. With 3 years' worth of food aboard the ships, the 129 crewmen attempted to wait it out and stayed on their vessels waiting for rescue. In April 1848, Captain Crozier ordered over 105 crew members to abandon their frozen ships and desperately head for safety hundreds of miles away. The crewmen faced extremely severe and dangerous conditions while trapped on the frozen vessels. Simply removing a balaclava could rip the skin off a person's face in the cold weather. The details of what these men had to endure while waiting rescue isn't well known. No journals or logbooks have ever been discovered. Temperatures outside the comfort of their ships could reach as low as -54 degrees Fahrenheit overnight and -31 degrees Fahrenheit by day. Lemons and lime juice were supplied on all ships in hopes to prevent the symptoms of scurvy, seeing as these men would be checked for it almost once a week. Aside from scurvy, frostbite was another huge problem for the crewmen stuck in the ice. It blistered fingers and made skin extremely tender. If the blood supply is lost in the body parts, gangrene can set in. This would lead to amputation if needed, and, well, I don't have to tell you how risky that is during the freezing temperatures. If that wasn't enough to be worried about, the crewmen also watched out for hypothermia. It's incredibly important not to get wet while being in these low temperatures. Once wet, men will shake uncontrollably, become sleepy, slur their speech, get amnesia, and become confused before passing out. In 1859, the sole piece of paper that revealed information on what happened was discovered. It's known as the Victory Point Note. It was a standard Admiralty form which in the margins said the ships had been deserted on April 22, 1848, and were stuck in the ice since September 12, 1846. It revealed Crozier and his leftover 105 crewmen departed on foot for the Backfish River. The note confirmed Sir John Franklin had died on June 11, 1847. After 2 years of receiving no communication from the Franklin mission, the Admiralty sent out a search party that returned with no success. Between 1847 and 1880, over 30 search expeditions journeyed into the Arctic in hopes of discovering the fate of the Franklin mission. Many of these search parties were the result of pressure issued by Sir John Franklin's wife, Lady Jane Franklin. Without her persuasion, the rescue expeditions most likely wouldn't have been sent until 1850. After much criticism, the British government offered rewards of £20,000 towards any evidence of the fate of the Erebus and Terror. Over the next 3 decades, many small items would be uncovered, such as tin cans, snow goggles, and cutlery. In 1854, Dr. John Ray heard Inuit stories of the expedition perishing somewhere to the west of the Backfish River. It was said that some of the crewmen had resorted to cannibalism due to many of the bodies and body parts found mutilated and left in cooking pots. Later tests and research done on a few well-preserved bodies showed the men were suffering from lead poisoning. It's believed the company who supplied the canned food, which at the time was considered cutting edge, had been contaminated by lead solder used to seal the tin cans. The crewmen were poisoning their bodies with every can they consumed. Even more recent experiments seem to show that the canned foods provided to the Franklin expedition weren't acidic enough, and that the likely culprit of the lead poisoning came from the internal pipe system on the ships. After being lost for over 170 years, both the Erebus and Terror wreckage were finally discovered in 2014 and 2016. Dives were conducted by both the underwater archaeologists from Parks Canada in collaboration with the Inuit Heritage Trust and have uncovered lots of amazing things. The expedition couldn't have been more prepared. They had highly experienced polar explorers, along with enough food and well-built ships for the journey. And yet they failed, and all 129 crewmen perished from the numerous dangers of the Arctic environment. I can only imagine, even with their friends and mates beside them, how lonely it must have been to drift into the darkness, knowing nothing they do will get them home to their loved ones. And in the end, no matter how prepared you are, only a miracle will save you from the great white nothing. I'll see you on the other side.